Good morning, guys, and greetings from Perth in West Australia. This is where I live, and it's a beautiful city, the most isolated capital city in the world. We're actually closer to Bali and Singapore than we are to Sydney. It's my great pleasure today to be asked to share my story with you, and I'd just like to say thank you so much to Megan for giving me this opportunity. Isn't she wonderful? So high vibrational herself. We all love her. Okay. So a very special day today for High Vibrational Mastery as we gather in celebration of a special occasion. In this video I'm going to share with you my journey and start by looking back before I woke up and then after I woke up later on. I was born in Kenya in East Africa of British parents who were working there, and had a very happy childhood. Growing up in Africa was very, very exciting. We did from time to time, pardon me, from time to time we made trips back to England to catch up with aunts and uncles and grandparents, which I do remember as a young child. But basically, most of my life has been spent here in Australia. At the age of 17, our family emigrated from Africa, from a country called Swaziland in Africa, where my parents had been working, and sailed across the Indian Ocean here to Fremantle, the port city of Perth. So like I say, a very happy childhood, very exciting childhood. I feel very, very fortunate in that respect. Throughout my life, I began my career, the main career I should say I've had, is that of being a pilot. I became a professional pilot and clocked nearly 9,000 hours, flying hours. I love aviation, I love flying, but I don't actually fly anymore. But I was doing that up until a number of years ago, before I moved into teaching ESL, which is English as a second language. And we started off, I say we, my wife and I, started off teaching in Japan. So we were living and working there for a few years. In more recent years, like now, up until COVID, we had been working for the past few years doing a winter job, which was running a ski lodge in Alpine Australia. There's no snow around Perth, it's too warm. We're in the subtropics here, but on the other side of Australia, between Sydney and Melbourne, and high up in the mountains, we do have ski resorts there. So I've been a lodge manager and working in that role, which is great because it's very social, it's very high vibrational, because you get to meet lots of people, and you know, they're all there for one reason, and that's to have fun. So that's what we've been doing for the last few years. But then of course this year, reality changed for all of us, and all our borders closed, and did not make it possible for us to go over to the state of Victoria to go skiing, to run the club. So to run the ski lodge, I should say, for the ski club. So we've spent most of the early part of this year was in lockdown, and thankfully, because of our small population, we only have 25 million people in Australia, and in Perth, it's a small city. We have about 2.5 million people. So COVID has been something that's been very easy to nip in the bud. The government is really, really good in cracking down straight away on distancing measures and basically isolating groups of cases, so that we are now at a situation where things are looking pretty good. However, I am aware that it's not so good around the world, in the States and particularly over in Europe as well. So I do pray that that changes for you guys. It has changed here. We don't wear masks here anymore. Life is very much back to normal, but we still have to be very careful to to sanitize and to maintain social distance. So basically we're getting there. So that brings me up to the present time. Now, let me tell you a little bit about how I woke up. I was raised a Catholic, and so that was great actually. I have found and looked back on many things that I picked up when I was a Christian in the Catholic Church, and many values. It taught me the power of prayer. It taught me the power of forgiveness and how we can heal that way. So it was a good starting ground for me. But what happened about 5 years ago is that I went for a very routine check for colon cancer, and it led to a colonoscopy, which actually removed a polyp from my bowel, from my colon, which was indeed cancerous. So, but the whole thing was, at that time, I didn't feel ill at all. I felt perfectly well, and it seemed almost impossible as I was listening to my surgeon in his offices, in his office there, as he was going through my chances of living for the next 5 years, and also making it through the operation, because I have cardiovascular disease. I've had that for a number of years, and he was concerned about how I would stand up to a colon resection operation. So back then I loved life, and I still do, but back then I was terrified of dying. I didn't want to die, and so my whole world basically fell apart. Now, call it coincidence, that's what I did at the time, but now I look back and call it divine orchestration. Would you believe that when I went to hospital, I was in hospital for about nearly 2 weeks, of all the thousands of nurses that could be looking after me in hospital, was Lee. Now Lee, you might say, who is Lee? Lee was a former neighbour of mine that lived just over the fence here with her partner in those days, Stefan. They were our lovely neighbours next door, but they were also these crazy spiritual people who used to burn sage, came wafting over the fence all the time, and incense, and they had I remember their wind chimes, and but moreover than that, they were lovely people. We loved them. We loved Lee and Stefan. But when they were telling us things about the universe and that, it just didn't make any sense to me at all. Being a Catholic at the time, but we loved them. They moved out a few years later, and so when I for the most of the time that I was in hospital, it just so happened, out of the thousands of nurses in Perth, that Lee should be assigned to looking after me. And it was wonderful. I knew then, when she was looking after me, that things were turning around somehow. And she kept telling me, as she always had done years ago, Paul, meditate, meditate. And when she was telling me that, when she was living next door, I was going, oh, yeah. But after leaving hospital, I started to do just that. I started to meditate. And very, very soon, I'm talking now about the space of about a 2-week window, things changed very dramatically for me after I started meditating. First of all, I think what it was out of the blue, after a few meditational sessions, I suddenly noticed this energy that people have been talking about in meditation. I could feel it in physicality. I could feel it in my crown. I could feel it in my heart chakra especially. And I found that I could move that energy from my lowest extremes through the root chakra and up through the heart, through throat and third eye and up to my crown and all the way back down again. And I thought, this is absolutely amazing. Yeah. I dropped my camera. Anyway, where were we? Yeah, moving energy. That's right, moving energy. And so what I also noticed at the same time was that I was really just starting to see things differently. Really feeling a lot more connected to what was around me. Just feeling one with everything. I'd heard about this, I think, before too, that, you kind of melt into the environment, when you're, let's say, in a forest or something like that. But now I notice how I could do this through presence. I could actually melt into the environment and close the gap of separation. With that came a lot of other things, and a lot of things started to fall away. I started to see things very, very differently. And at the time, I felt very guilty because what I was seeing was actually contradicting what I'd always believed in previously. Not everything, but a lot of things. And the guilt that I was feeling, I think I had such a love for Jesus and Mary in the Catholic Church. And but the thing I was noticing was that gap between Jesus, that gap between Mary, was also closing too. I was feeling closer to both of them. It was wonderful. It was really, truly wonderful. And I think it was that realization that persuaded me to continue going with my feelings, with what I was sensing. Like I say, it was contradicting everything that I'd previously known or learned before. And since that time, the expansion has just progressed beyond measures that I even dreamed. I have astral traveled several times, and that's been very, very interesting. Entering a state of super awareness, but a state of peace, tranquility, a beautiful feeling of ascension, rising up. But at the same time, in a few cases, fear overcame me of leaving the body, and the angelic, I feel, what the angelic does is they put you right back in the body if any fear comes in at all when you're in astral travel. I think I'm learning to overcome that now. I've had some metaphysical experiences which I hold very, very dear to me. I'm not sure I want to talk about it just now, but I'm sure I will do down the track. But it was a wonderful, beautiful experience I experienced, which has left me with a tangible sense of spirit all the time, in physicality, tangible. So I can connect with spirit very, very easily. But what it's also left me with too is it's connected me to cognizance. And I've been getting for the last 2 or 3 years regular downloads. I get them almost every day, and usually in the morning when I wake up. Um, and it may all come in a flash like that, but it's a sudden knowingness of a particular thing that maybe I was holding to self-inquiry. Um, but it can also come over a period of hours in chunks as well. The thing is, what I like to do is I like to be able to how can I say, transcribe what is coming through, put it into writing, because I do have a terrible memory. And when I do this, what I also noticed a couple of years ago is that as I start to write, I write automatically. The words just flow, the words just come. And sometimes I'm using vocab that I don't think I've ever used before, or I might have, but not really understood the meaning of, but I'll still use it. Check it in a dictionary later, and it fits perfectly into the context. The messages I'm receiving, I am learning from. And what I mean by that is I've learned from, and I'm very grateful for this too, from so many other people, from so many other souls, from their wisdom, from their insight. But I find wisdom and insight coming through from cognizance from me that I have never heard before. And so just a few of those downloads I'm going to share with you today. The first one I think I'm starting off with is From a Distance, and that was one of my most significant early downloads. But I've had many, many more since then. And I have to keep this within time limits, this video, so there's only so many I can talk about, but hopefully I'll be able to do them justice when I do talk about them. So basically that's my journey up to this point in time. So we'll move on now, and I'll talk about the first download. The first download being From a Distance. From a Distance, yeah, that was an amazing download. I received that probably about 2.5 years ago, and in a nutshell, basically what it was seeing from the high vibrational perspective, seeing through God's eyes. You know, on this journey, the soul path journey, the first part of the journey is finding God, finding the God self. Once we've found the self, call off the search, because then after that, what we're doing then is we're journeying into God. And one thing, what's been a very common theme for me all the way through my downloads, is it always keeps reflecting back on the qualities of our true nature. You know, we've got those beautiful innate qualities within each of us. We are happiness. We are peace. We are tranquility. We are compassion. We are joy. We are love. We're fearless. All these beautiful qualities. And as we journey into God, it's learning to live through those qualities, I feel. And also to see through those qualities as well. And that's what From a Distance was all about. I had 3 visions over a period of weeks, and each of them was giving me an analogy of seeing from the God perspective. I think it was Wayne Dyer, the late great Wayne Dyer, who said, when we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. And that's so true. So how do we change the way we look at things? Well, I think the more that we connect with the happiness, with the peace, the love, the tranquility within, the picture changes. Have you ever noticed, like, when you're particularly low vibrational, let's say in an argument, the slightest little thing can make you just snap. Conversely, when you're happy, when you're at peace, we face those challenges, but we seem to navigate through them much, much easier. They don't seem to bother us. And that's because our vibration is higher. So the distance I'm referring to from a distance is distancing ourselves vibrationally from the lower poles, basically. So we distance away from unhappiness, we distance away from turmoil, and so on. The three visions I had, the first one was all relating to experiences I've had in the past. My wife and I visited New York a few years ago. I think we were there in February, and it was actually my first time to New York. And I loved the place. I loved the city. We did all the New York things, as you do, we went to Broadway, saw some shows, had the pastrami sandwich, went to those great stores like Macy's and Dean and DeLuca, Central Park. It was great, really good. Where we were staying was the name of the hotel was the District Hotel, and just across the way we could see from our window the New York Times. So we're right in Manhattan, and it was a great place to be. But after a little while of being there, we started to see, as you always do, and what you even would do here in Perth, you start to see the not so good things. People on the streets, poor homeless people. It was freezing cold. We saw weirdos, basically, is the only way I can describe it. People who really seem quite unusual. But then you expect that in a big city of many millions of people. But then there was a litter on the streets. There was the sirens all the time of NYPD and ambulances and all that. And you get to notice it after being there a few days. But then we took a trip out to Ellis Island on the ferry. And it was a cloudy, overcast day. But the time that we arrived on Ellis Island, the sun came out. And I remember getting off the ferry and looking around and just seeing this absolutely amazing view of New York. The same city, but seeing it from a linear distance, it was just so different. There was yellow and orange and different coloured lights reflecting off the skyscrapers and reflecting like diamonds off the Hudson River. It was just absolutely incredible. And it's the same city, but seen from a different perspective, a higher vibrational perspective. So we were outside the story now. We weren't in the city. We weren't seeing all the litter. We weren't seeing the homeless people. We weren't seeing, the barren Central Park in the middle of winter. Now we were seeing something very, very beautiful. Now, the Impressionistic painting, when you look at them in a gallery, let's say, you go close up to them, you see a lot of the confusion of brushstrokes, lots of splashes of colour, not really making any sense if you were to go right up to it. But basically, as you move away from an Impressionistic painting, like let's say a Monet or a Manet, the more you move away from the painting, the more beautiful that painting becomes. But more than that, the more realistic the painting becomes too. And this again connected to that from a distance, because I feel that when we look at things from a more high vibrational point of view, we're not only seeing it look more beautiful, but we're seeing it more realistically. Because what goes on in our life down here truly is illusory. And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way to say that we just ignore reality, our sense of reality here on Gaia. Not at all. Because we have these challenges we face, all the darkness, all the difficulties, issues we face in life are there to help us. They are provided for our benefit, to experience, to transcend, to rise above. And it's by doing that that we expand in awareness. So basically that was it. That's what the From a Distance was all about. It was using the distance of linearity and cross-referencing that with vibrational distance, from being in low vibration, seeing it one way, and then when we achieve higher vibration, we see it in a much, much better light. Okay. Okay, this next download I'd like to share with you, I called the shift and the narrowing of the poles. It was a download I received about a year ago, and it relates very much to the divine plan of the ascension to 5D. It took me right back to the time of Lemuria, when there was peace and harmony on the planet. And then it moved into the Piscean age, and with the fall from grace of humanity, with the separation, we ended up in a very, very low vibrational point. In Earth time would be around the Middle Ages. Since that time we've had some pretty awful occurrences too, like with the First World War and the Second World War, the Vietnam War, and more recently 9/11. But in all of those particular wars and wars prior to that, the planet has been slowly healing. So we're actually in much higher vibration now than what we were 50 years ago or 100 years ago. And this is something that I wasn't aware of. I thought we were progressively getting lower and lower and lower. Well, sure, we're destroying the planet, there's no doubt about that, with pollution and so forth. But from a vibrational point of view, we've actually been healing. And that was the interesting thing I picked up from this. That it's through all those low vibrational moments in history, when the collective has really come together, the human collective has come together to help out, to reach out, to transcend and overcome those issues of the past. So this brings us to the point where we are now. And one thing that was brought to my attention was that with the fall from grace, with the dropping down to such a low vibrational point and attaching us to those lower vibrations, the cords of attachment, we've actually managed to, over time, we managed to widen the pole. So let's say back in the time of Lemuria, you had bliss on the one end, on the other end of the scale you would have sadness. Yes, they did have sadness back then. Of course, things like when people passed away, it was terribly sad for the people of Lemuria. So these poles will always remain with us. But what is happening is the lower ends of the poles are gradually going to be eroding away. Each time we have these purges that we had with the wars, and what's coming up especially in the near future now. We're facing a very difficult time, but I think we have to, just look at it from the point of view of the higher perspective, which is what I was talking about earlier in From a Distance. That's what Spirit was telling me, is just keep the vibration up and keep looking at the positive side of things. So yes, so those lower poles we pulled ourselves down into the realm of terror, and terror still remains with us. We pulled ourselves down into the realms of despair, from sadness. We're all the way down to despair now on this planet. So this is what we're going to be clearing with this next shift. And as we do so, as a collective, as we get together, and this is what is going to happen, this is what we can expect in the months and years ahead, is that the collective will get together and say, enough is enough. And, we're going to be, through an act of grace, we're going to be reaching a point where we can rise above all of this, transcend all of this, and start heading back, closing the poles and heading back towards the way we were back in the time of Lemuria. We're nearly there, guys. And I think it's something just to bear in mind, keep in the back of our mind that we can do this, and we will do this. And there are very exciting times ahead. It was a beautiful download, and I'd love to share it with you here today. This last download I'd like to share with you here today is expansion inwards. It's one that I received from Jesus. Now, as I mentioned earlier on, I've always had a great love for Jesus all my life, from when I was growing up as a Catholic and now on my spiritual path. And I've been able to identify Jesus' energy very beautifully. I receive it in the crown chakra and to my left. So he's always to my left here. In this particular download, I was having a conversation with Jesus, and I was referring to expansion of awareness, how we can grow and expand in awareness, and asking him questions about this. And I mentioned at one point about the expansion being outwards. We expanding outwards the more that we grow in awareness. He actually corrected me on that and said, actually the expansion is inwards. Because we're in time, space, growth, expansion, we see as expanding outwards, growing in size. But the whole universe is within. And the expansion, what we refer to as expansion, is actually inwards. It's actually reducing down to a 0 point. It's almost like, if you can imagine a process of distillation, where in distillation you separate away all the impurities, so all that you're left with is just the pure, uncontaminated version, down to an essence. And our essence is the Christ consciousness. And so in our realm here on Gaia, throughout our incarnations, we face all those veils which separate us from the truth of who we really truly are, in the form of challenges we face, in the form of just anything negative at all, anything which opposes our true nature. that all stands in our way of actually seeing the truth. As we expand along the spiritual path, what we're doing is we're getting rid of all those contaminants, and we're distilling it down to the purity, the essence of who we truly are. I can't do it now because I'm holding the camera, but imagine the praying hands together. Yeah, they're kind of indicating that point to which we're reaching, that point, 0 point of perfection that we find in divinity, with bliss, happiness, unconditional love, and all those other beautiful qualities. They've all been distilled down to the very most pure version. So that's expansion inwards. Also the peace sign too indicates that, doesn't it really? You can see at the top, the widest part at the top there is the hole with the contaminants and everything. But down near the heart, down here, down there, it narrows down to a point of purity. Yeah. I hope it makes sense. It does to me, and I thought I'd make that my last one to share in this particular video. Like I say, I've had many dozens, scores of downloads, and these are the 3 that I chose to share with you today. And so guys, that brings us towards the end of this video, and in wrapping up, I've just got a few notes here that I'd like to share with you. As you know, everything I've mentioned here is in my truth. All these little captions you've seen have come through from the truth that I've received, and we're all mutually exclusive fractals of source, so therefore we all think a little bit differently. We all do have our own truth, but we might resonate from time to time, and I hope some of this does resonate with you, because it's through the resonance of sharing that we truly expand on this path. And I feel that the more that we can trust in the divine plan for each one of us, the more that we can trust in our intuition, the more that will open up for us. We will see with clearer vision, more veils will fall. There's a noticeable shift in our perspective. And another note I've got here is basically we're getting the higher vibrational perspective, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? On the soul path, it's just meandering and navigating our way through life, realizing that everything is meant to be in divine orchestration, meant to be. The universe is acting for us, not against us. Challenges can be viewed as opportunities when you think of it that way. If we can transcend that which pulls us down, we've won in that particular thing. So the challenges are opportunities to expand. And from here, I pray that if I should attach to just 2 things from this point on in my life, they will be to my heart and to the present moment that also came through for me recently. We face great challenges ahead, but just realizing that they're there to help us. Love, joy, kindness, compassion, the altruistic approach to life will soar us above everything. If we can learn to find these things in our life and embrace them, then we're journeying into God. Remembering who we truly are, serving each other to the best of our ability. I think the reasons why we're here, the sole purpose, is to love one another, to serve one another, and to remember who we truly are. Much love to you all, guys, and I hope you've enjoyed this video, and have a great day. Namaste.